Welcome to Process Unpacked, the podcast where we tackle project management and workflow challenges to help you work smarter. My name is Amir Khorram. I'm a 20-year tech industry veteran, and in this episode, we dive into the real-world strategies that boost your team's efficiency, brought to you by Meegle. What is Meegle? Meegle is a project management tool trusted by over 200,000 daily active users around the world. Today, I'm joined by Jim Welch, CEO and founder of the DevHouse agency, a multi-million-dollar development studio specializing in gaming and immersive technologies like AR and VR. From pre-production to launch, Jim's team has mastered workflows that balance creativity and precision, all while collaborating with industry giants and managing complex projects.
Welcome to Process Unpacked. Dive into practical insights, expert advice, and real stories from businesses of every size. Join us as we tackle project management challenges like team collaboration and workload management. Let's get started.
Jim, thanks again for joining us. Maybe to start off here, can you share your journey in founding DevHouse and how it evolved into essentially a multi-million-dollar development studio specializing in gaming and immersive tech like AR, VR?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I guess I don't know how typical of a story it is, but it was very grassroots, ground up. I started working at other agencies doing somewhat similar work. I didn't go do a big raise to start a business. I just decided, hey, I want to try my hand at doing this. And so a lot of it was early days was freelance, a person acting as a business. And then through getting some success and ultimately busy, just hiring support. I'd be like, okay, I need some help here. Let me hire one other engineer on contract for this one project. And then, I guess I need an artist now for this. And so just scaling organically as more work came in and then looking up, we have a business here. And then from there, So instead of coming at it with all the solutions, it was let's do this thing, and then we'd have a problem and be like, okay, what is the problem and how do we fix it and build the systems to keep growing?
That makes sense. Sounds like a common entrepreneurial story, right? You're not necessarily thinking 10 steps ahead. You're thinking right in front of you and then seeing problems as they come along and solving them as you go. So that's pretty exciting to hear. That's the path that you guys followed here. So you've served as a VR subject matter experts for corporations like ExxonMobil. I know Exxon has been involved in XR and VR for quite some time. So how has that expertise influenced you, Jim, when you're approaching managing diverse and complex projects at DevHouse?
Yeah, getting to work with anywhere from small creative studios to really large organizations like ExxonMobil, it gives you a range of experience of kind of really tool access is something that's really interesting to see at these different stages of corporations, like which tools they use and which processes they use. As you grow a business and you get bigger, your processes are, I think, the things that adapt the most because you have to handle things at scale. So really the exposure to that was really, I guess, the most useful thing that I was able to take into my business and choose which parts made sense for what we do.
Makes sense. That's great. That's great. So what inspired you and your current project management approach? How does it help streamline both the creative side of your business and the operational tasks across your studio?
Yeah, I think I'm a kind of a minimalist at heart. Most things that interest me, whether it's game design or how I decorate my home, it's all like, how do I keep things clean and simple and don't overload the problem? And so I think that inspires also my selection of kind of what tools we use as a business. And so, when it comes to like project management and project management tools specifically, I'm looking for things that in kind of minimalist concepts, it's like something that's beautiful that can be impactful without having a lot of busyness. Something else I care a lot about is like keeping not a lot of tools, where we have 20 different tools to do the things we need to do, but we can condense these different things into a single tool as much as possible. There is a point where we have to start to break out of that as you get bigger, but that's really inspired my decision making when it comes to the software we use and the tools we use.
Makes sense. Yeah. So managing immersive tech, it's complicated. And you hit, I think, a really appropriate word for the XR VR space, which is beautiful. Because the outcome, whether it's in consumer, whether it's for enterprise deployments, they can be really amazing stuff. But I don't think everybody necessarily thinks about the complex processes, deadlines, stress that goes into deploying these different types of these outcomes, these amazing immersive solutions. In the AR VR space, like we said, it often involves unique challenges. How do you keep up with stringent project management system that adapts to iterative and experimental nature of your projects?
Yeah, software development is chaotic. It's especially custom software development, right? Even if you're doing a single product, there's complexities, but especially with what we do, every project is a unique creative need. And it's someone comes to us and says, hey, we need this game built, or hey, we need this VR experience. And sure, we may use Unreal in 2 experiences or Unity in 2 experiences, and that's a commonality. But there's so much scope is different, budget's different, team is different, specific technical requirements are different. And the foundational things that we do to keep this chaos somewhat contained is processes and like kind of foundational concepts. So things like, okay, this is how we run a sprint, and this is how we handle production timelines, because those can be pretty universal. But then when it comes to like individual tasks and like how we actually approach the specific problems, it leans a lot on the PM. The project manager we really expect a lot of our PMs to own the project and really understand it at a deep level. And it's not just running a sprint and doing the rituals. It's actually understanding the software and understanding the creative side and having a creative voice in the project. And that gives us that agility that lets us adapt, because that person's taking kind of personal engagement, not just checking boxes for that project.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think it's fair to say, like, inherently not a lot of project management tools are built with gaming in mind. Although we've found at Meagle over the last a couple of years, like the gaming industry and software development and gaming has been a really interesting and fast growing user base for our platform. But what kind of gaps or limitations are you frequently encountering? Are there ways that you've worked around them?
There's definitely a lot of overlap between, at its core, games are software. And so software development and games have a lot of overlap. I think the divergence comes from more the art side. I think, let's say a traditional mobile app obviously has art, has UI, there's a UX you care about, but it's not quite as art heavy. And the creative side, while it's still there, it's often more business focused. And so games has a kind of more creative leaning than most software. And so the gap we often find is on that approval process of like, how do we approve art? How do we approve 3D models? How do we approve a new feature? These things aren't as well encompassed in the normal flows of tools that we have. And so we initially tried some things, and we experimented with some different tools that kind of, you would upload things, you could do draw overs and whatnot. But our team is pretty small, and we actually found that adhering to those tools slowed us down because of basically the onboarding time for each person. And so that was a gap for us, that there just wasn't a smooth transition for the art side. So we've transitioned that to like mostly meetings, and like we have dedicated, let's make a creative decision here and then go to our tools to execute. And so the tools are more execution, and the face-to-face time is a lot of the creative decision-making.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's a really helpful, detailed view of how that works for you guys. So working with a AAA studio that often requires specific sections of, or delivering on specific sections of a much broader project, right? I can only imagine working with some of these AAA studios, that the massive deployments, the massive rollouts that they're working on, when you guys are tackling on a specific section of that. Why is having a strong internal organization so critical, to ensure that you guys deliver seamless collaboration across different studios, different teams, and maybe even different methodologies to how they approach projects?
Whenever you show up to those client meetings, ultimately there's an expectation that they're hiring you because you have expertise. And otherwise they would go on a Fiverr or some kind of contractor style website where they could just hire somebody like an Upwork, those sorts of things. So when someone works with us and teams like ours, there's an expectation of capability. And I think you really show that in those check-in meetings, and those fall apart if you don't have your internal stuff together. So you really need to know what you're doing and know how to properly organize it, and then present the results and what you've been working on in a structured way, which really requires tools and systems and processes. Otherwise, you're waiting for them to lead you, and ultimately you leave those meetings in that situation feeling just off, and the relationship isn't great, and you don't get more work. So it's pretty critical. I think at a very small, if you're a contractor, maybe not. Like if you're just an individual, you can let them lead you. But if you're a team being subbed out some stuff, you really have to be internally sound for sure.
So along the lines of that point, like when you're integrating external collaborators, right? Like you mentioned, like a contractor, an external studio, we know that can be difficult, right? And how do you maintain visibility and coordination across those teams?
We actually, for the core team, we have on-site as the primary work style. Obviously through COVID, there was a stage where we had to work remote. But as we've phased out of that, we've always been an on-site forward team and always focused on that, even though it's not necessarily the most popular choice because we found the community building and the connection and the rituals make a big difference in what we do and the iteration time we spend. So for our core team, that works really well. When we bring in someone external, like a contractor or a partner, we try to bring them into as many rituals as we can. So like our morning meeting, we'll do Google Meet, we'll connect with them and have them participate and all those sorts of rituals as much as we can. Outside of that, it's really, again, we put a lot of ownership on our project manager to be that communication bridge. Hey, the creative team internally wants this, the client wants this. Here's what you as a contractor are doing or need to know, and they're going to be that communication bridge. I think that is a big gap right now from what I've discovered working with other teams and working with other PMs is that they lean too much into kind of checking boxes of here's how we organize stories and points and here's how I operate Scrum, but they're forgetting to focus on I'm the communication gap. I need to know the details of what these people want and communicate those.
That seems like a winning approach that's clearly proven for you guys. So how do you approach like templatizing and establishing processes, like repeatable processes for different game types? Maybe it ranges from smaller projects to larger immersive experiences. What are some ways that you guys have really honed in on that and maybe how it's helped your business?
We have a project manager checklist. And so throughout the years, and it gets updated every couple months with some new item that we've discovered. Basically, when there's a breakdown, when something doesn't go well, a client gets upset about something, or we internally were unsatisfied with something that we saw on a project, that results in a change in process. And so we have this checklist that we go through, and that's a template foundational that we can use for every project. Now, there's some things like we might have a really unique project that's like a 3-week turnaround. It's a very small thing. Maybe we can't do that full checklist, but it serves as like a starting point. And the particular project manager for that project can decide, hey, we're not going to do these steps and make that choice. But the list is there, and it's an available option to step through there and make sure things aren't missed and avoid some of those pain points. And so that travels between projects and other like core systems, things like, again, how we run stand-ups and sprints and things, transitions between projects.
So is there a specific success story maybe that comes to mind with this type of organized project management approach?
Yeah, there's a fun story. The short version of it is, pretty far into this prototype project we were working on for a particular client. There was a dramatic design change where they said, hey, we like what's going on, but we think the core focus needs to be like in this space where we want to attach it to this this fantasy that people have and want to play as this avatar. And so we could have been like, hey, we're really far into production. Like this would be really hard to change. And there's a lot of risk here. Let's save this for later. But because of past experience and systems and processes, we knew we had a way to resolve that. And so we said, okay, we'll take it on. And so in that particular case, we shifted to a kind of ultra agile mode that we do, where we basically, it's just a Kanban board physically in person, where we pull totally away from our digital versions of PM work. And we have a physical board that everyone operates with, and we take tasks through there. And so we've established that as a tool in our tool belt. And so it's not our normal system, and it has its flaws, but when we need to go really fast, it works really well. And so having that tool, we are able to accomplish it and make the change they requested and deliver that prototype to them despite the small time frame.
Very cool. That seems like a good approach. It's kind of a mix of the digital visualization of projects and then stepping away and actually working through that Kanban board in physical form. A lot of people might look at a software agency and XR development team and think, wow, they're super creative. They're all about design and vision and visuals, maybe not thinking about how important things like dashboards and data may be for you guys. Are there ways that you guys are using dashboards and reporting tools to track productivity, identify, see trouble ahead in advance or opportunity ahead? Yeah,
sure. Yeah. One of the things when we present ourselves as potential partners to clients, we lead often with our production process because there's so many people that in the range of experience that create games and create these. Because really, we make really fun experiences. They're neat to pretty much anyone who builds software probably has a little part of them that wants to make a game or make something AR, VR, because it's a fun thing. And so the way we set ourselves apart is our production process and our use of tools like dashboards. And so, for example, our big go-to dashboard is every morning we look at a dashboard that presents people's hours for the day. So we see how many hours they've said, hey, I have this many hours worth of tasks that I'm owning for today that they populate daily. and then the previous day, how many hours they completed from those tasks. And so by looking at that, we have a clear, hey, this person only has 3 hours today. Like they might not know what they're supposed to work on, which is pretty normal in a very agile space. Hey, let's connect with them after this morning meeting and give them more guidance. Or, hey, this person's been like completing only 4 hours a day for the past few days. It seems like they're not hitting their expectation of how long it should take. So let's connect with them and add support. By using this dashboard daily, it really gives us that immediate feedback, and you don't wait 2 weeks, land on a sprint, check in and say, oh, you didn't get any of your stuff done. That's not good. It gives us more of a daily iterative connection point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think oftentimes when you look at a project from a really high level, you're able to see, okay, how are these projects moving versus deadlines? But I think drilling in multiple layers to see actually by day, by hour, how are people allocated across projects and what is their realistic ability to take on more or less? And sometimes taking on less means projects will get done more quickly and efficiently. It's really interesting to move those puzzle pieces around and really see what the opportunities are and what resources you have to deliver on them.
And it gives you an accountability too. I always equate it to going to the gym. Even if you really want to go to the gym and you desire to get in shape, having a trainer or someone that's asking you to be there, that like you wake up and you're like, my trainer's got to be there. I can't sleep in. They're going to be like, why didn't you show up? So from the business side, it's the same thing. It's not that we're micromanaging. It's, hey, we care about what you get done. We're going to see those just 4 hours tomorrow, and we're not going to yell at you for it, but everyone's going to see it, and you're going to know that we'll see it. So it gives you that sense of accountability. Hey, I should do my best, and if I fall short, that's fine, but I should put my best foot forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. So expanding on some of these topics, how do you involve new team members across different roles, like developers, designers, testers, in like refining, looking at a workflow? So how do you involve these different roles and different pieces and players in your team across a workflow to ensure that it supports everyone?
Yeah, so we do a couple weekly meetings with leadership who kind of has like tendrils into everyone down to all the people in the trenches and working on every specific task. And so these couple weekly meetings that we have, that's really an opportunity for us. I mean, that's what we lead the question with, like, how is engineering doing? Tell us about how everyone's doing. And so topics will get brought up there about, oh, this person's having trouble with this. Right now we're trying like an on-off day for a particular project where we want to make progress on something, but we often put it aside because it's an internal project. But we're tired of doing that. Okay, let's have a dedicated on day. So we check in and say, how are people liking this? And based on their feedback, we then will use that feedback to ultimately inform choices about production. Hey, no one's liking this system. Maybe we should modify it, or maybe we need to train people better to understand it. So it's those check-in points, those weekly check-in points that give us that access, and their feedback influences our choices.
Got it. That's good to know. What are, maybe to take a step back when you're talking about just how you build your project management processes and how those work for the immersive kind of XR software space. So when you're creating AR, VR experiences, Jim, it's certainly a whole different world than traditional gaming projects. So maybe what are some unexpected project management challenges that you guys face that you think that seem like maybe aren't common to traditional gaming?
Yeah, there are a lot of technical challenges that we face that, because we're willing to work in spaces that are more fringe than core or flat screen gaming experiences. If you only make role-playing games for Nintendo Switch, right? It's like you have a very clear tech stack and a very clear design discipline that you focus in. But when we open the doors to say, hey, we are willing and open and desire to do VR location-based entertainment or things like that, it opens such a broad range of technical needs and solutions you have to handle. And so for our team, a lot of our culture and our core values are around like tackling challenging things and not shying away from something new. And that's been a really great experience because it flexes that muscle of learning new things. And that's just built into our pre-production time. They're like, hey, we're going to learn this, but we're going to learn by doing and discover as we go.
That makes sense. And then to expand on, again, some of kind of the strategic high level side of you running your business, what's your process for turning high level ideas in, whether it's for a game or a new service? How do you turn high level ideas into an actionable workflow that teams can see, understand, and execute?
We take it from a high level design breakdown first. So typically I'll look at a project, and since I've built enough experiences, I can mentally chunk it into, okay, this is a high level grouping of these features, and break it into big chunks. And then the project manager will go from there and break it down into like discipline focused chunks. Okay, we need a procedural world generation. Okay, I know that's an engineering task. Okay, I'm going to break that down into like more of I guess the traditional would be like a story. Like, okay, what's the output of this specific thing that we need? It's okay, we need to see grass generated. Let's just start with grass. I'll pick something and then they'll go to the engineer and be like, hey, what do you think this should take? And so it's a bit of a team process of someone with enough architectural experience to big chunk it. And then with somebody with project management experience to build a user story out of it. And then a craft person to say, hey, this is how many hours it'll take. And hey, maybe we should rephrase this because that actually should probably be 2 stories because it's such a different workload to give you what you're asking for. So it's a bit of a team process on that.
Sure. And how have your processes evolved as DevHouse has grown? Maybe, Jim, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how your project management approach has grown since you guys are a small agency to evolving into where you are now. How has that evolved for you guys?
Sure. Yeah, at early days, it was really just all about task completion, especially when it was like just me as a contractor. And even for a while after that, it's all about, hey, what are the tasks that need to get done? And how do we get them done effectively and make sure it's high quality output? And that works at a small scale and it keeps you really focused, and there's some benefits to it for sure. As we've grown though and worked on larger productions and scaled as a business, we've really had to evolve to build in phases of production. And so that's like the pre-production, the post-production phases, and ensuring that we like try to build those milestones in that aren't client requested, but like internally, hey, this is our pre-production phase. There might be 2 or 3 milestones to the client within here, but we internally know that this embodiment of work is part of pre-production. And if we don't check some boxes before we go into production, we're going to have some pain points later. And so the learning to start to force those and be more strict and stringent with those have been required as we've grown.
Makes sense. So this space is obviously growing rapidly, which love to see. There's all kinds of new gaming studios that are popping up and developing cool content as well. If you could advise these other gaming studios, or immersive tech companies, what's one thing you'd recommend as far as maybe not the design part of it, because obviously everyone has their own methodologies and approach to like how they design content, but really like tactically as a business, as somebody who's successfully grown DevHouse, how would you advise a gaming studio on how to effectively project manage their business?
Yeah, a couple things. I think the first thing at a very high level, there's 2 kind of philosophies, and either is viable, but what worked for me is being open and agile with the type of work you're open to doing. So if you're really focused on, hey, we will only do this type of project, there's some benefits to that because you can become a really big expert in that space. You can say, this is what we do and we are the best in the world at it. And that's great. But that is a challenge because you have to really deliver on that promise. What we do is we offer such a variety of capabilities that a client can come to us with something that's left field or can adapt like as they're working on a project. And we can take that on and we're not like, sorry, that's not our space. Now we're stuck in it and we paint ourselves in a corner and you can't make that adaptation. So from a business side, that's something that I think helps a lot of just being hungry for cool projects and going and getting them. From a more tactical project management side, a lot of issues I've seen is people not putting enough expectations on their project managers. So I think it's like delegating out the ownership too much of, hey, yeah, like the engineer is going to own that and I'm sure it'll be fine. It's not, the project manager needs this to be their baby. They need to really own every piece of this and needs to be deeply connected to their project. Even go to the extreme of they can give creative feedback and ultimately it's still the creative director who makes the final call. But a lot of those smaller decisions go through a PM because they're the most connected to the project. They know what the client wants. They understand what all the craft people are doing. So that would be a big thing. It's like really push your PMs to own the project and be deeply ingrained in it.
That's great. Looking again at how technically involved you guys are, and I can only imagine the types of software and tools you guys use, but looking at tactically the actual software and technology you guys are using, is it critical for you guys to have tools that are essentially communicating with each other, or is it really in your industry unique siloed tech that's like unmessed with by anything else? So do you guys use technology that's essentially communicating across different platforms, different devices, different even operating systems, or is it really separated the way you guys operate?
Yeah, it's a good question. We try to connect things as much as it makes sense to do. So I guess to dive into that a bit more, like there's not a lot of hard requirements to silo things. There's occasional projects where we have to separate things for like legal reasons, and mostly that's like IP protection and just making sure people's content is protected. And so there's sometimes requirements for that. But most of the time, all of our tools, we try to interconnect them as much as provides value. So like we use Slack a lot, for example, for our internal communications. And so like we try to build in a few API connections where Slack will auto notify us for things, but we found sometimes that can be a detriment. Like at one point we had, every time someone made a push to our repository, a code push to our repository, it would let the channel know. It'd be like, hey, this person made this update. It ended up being so noisy that people just were ignoring the channel. So sometimes those connections can be distracting and don't add much value. So it's like finding what helps your organization. And for us, it's, I would say, light interconnectivity here and there.
That's a good way to put it. Find that balance of interoperability, interconnectivity between tools, but sometimes overly connecting things or maybe creating too many triggers and alerts can mute the impact of what you're actually trying to accomplish there. So that's really great. Cool. Jim, I appreciate like all the insight and the background you've provided. It's such a unique space you guys are in. You guys are clearly doing some amazing work. Where can listeners connect with you and learn more about the groundbreaking work that DevHouse is working on in gaming and immersive tech?
Yeah, you can find us. We're pretty active on LinkedIn. And so you can search for the DevHouse Agency on LinkedIn. Also, I know Blue Sky is up and coming. And so you can search DevHouse Agency on Blue Sky. And we're on pretty much all social platforms, but those are two great places to start. And then you can always search for us on most other platforms as well.
That's great. I'm new to Blue Sky as well and enjoying the environment there. So that's great. So listen, thanks again, Jim, for joining us. Your time and expertise is really exceptional. So I really appreciate you investing the time in chatting with us today. Thanks for joining us to explore how multi-million-dollar studios like DevHouse approach project management in gaming and immersive tech. Listen, don't miss our next episode of Process Unpacked, where we'll dive into strategies and transforming complex workflows into streamlined processes and streamlined success. Thanks for your time and wish you guys continued success. We'll be keeping an eye out for your content in the XR world.
Thanks, Amir. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us to explore how a multi-million-dollar studio like DevHouse approaches project management in gaming and immersive technologies. Don't miss our next episode of Process Unpacked, where we'll dive into strategies for transforming complex workflows into streamlined success.
Thanks for tuning in to Process Unpacked. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts or start a free trial of Meegle at www.meegle.com.